Hi guys, and welcome back to Bookhaven with me, Kim. Today I'm going to be talking about my favorite books of 2018. Now, I know what you're saying, 2018 is not over yet, and that's true. I still have some books that I'm reading this month, and who knows, they could end up on my favorite list. But for now, I'm going to take what I've read so far and tell you about some of my favorite finds. So I've sectioned my books up. I've got my favorite middle grade reads, I've got my favorite adult books, and YA collection. So let's go and start with middle grade. One of my favorite finds in middle grade this year was Nevermoor, The Trials of Morrigan by Jessica Townsend. Now, this is a book that if you're into middle grade, you've probably heard about. Some people said that it's giving them the same feelings as they had when they first picked up Harry Potter. For me, it was similar, I gotta say, but there's another book that gave me those feels even more so. But this was incredible. I can't believe the imagination of this young author. I'll read you a little bit what this is about. Now it says, Morrigan Crow is cursed. Born on Eventide, the unluckiest day for a child to be born, Morrigan is blamed for all the local misfortunes, from hailstorms to heart attacks, and worst of all, the curse dooms her to die at midnight on her 11th birthday. But as Morrigan awaits her fate, a strange and remarkable man named Jupiter North appears. Chased by black smoke hounds and shadowy hunters on horseback, he whisks her away into the safety of a secret magical city called Nevermoor. And it was the city and the magic in this book that just pulled me right in. It's in Nevermoor that Morrigan discovers Jupiter has chosen her to contend for a place in the city's most prestigious organization, the Wondrous Society. In order to join and stay in the safety of the Nevermoor for good, Morrigan must compete in 4 difficult and dangerous trials against hundreds of other children, or she'll have to leave the city to confront her deadly fate. That's the gist of this book, but it's so much more. The characters, the friendships, the suspense, it really works its magic on you as well. It worked its magic on me, and this was definitely one of my top favorite finds in 2018. Now I've got another book that I wanted to show you, which I haven't seen many booktubers talk about, or many people at all, is the one I was mentioning that gave me all the Harry Potter feels. It's not the story, it's just the writing was fantastic, the magic was wonderful, and the story just grabs you in and wraps itself around you. And that is Dragon's Green by Scarlett Thomas. This is an author I had never heard of before, and I haven't heard much about this book or this author on BookTube or online. I just came across it one day while randomly looking through all the spines at my favorite bookstore, and this is book 1 of 2. I believe it's a duology. The second one's out now. Just the cover. I absolutely fell in love with the cover. It's one of the most beautiful, fantastical covers I've seen in any of the novels I've read this year, I think. What do you think? I'll show you a close-up here. So I will read you a little bit about this and then give you some of my thoughts. It says, Effie Truelove believes in magic, as does her grandfather Griffin, although he refuses to do any magic, let alone teach Effie how to use it. After a mysterious incident leaves Griffin close to death, Effie is given an unusual silver ring and told she must look after her grandfather's library of rare and powerful books. So of course, any story that is about books, I'm instantly drawn to. But then the books fall into the hands of shady scholar Leonard Lever, and Effie is propelled into the most dangerous adventure of her life. Now Effie and her newfound friends, nerdy Maximilian, rugby mad Wolf, helpful Lexi, and eccentric Raven, those names are awesome, and they're such great fleshed out characters in the book, must discover their true powers if they are to get the books back. And Effie alone will have to travel to the other world, where she will uncover the true meaning of the strange old book called Dragon's Green. I don't want to say too much and spoil this for you, but if you did love Harry Potter, if you do have any inclination towards books like Nevermoor and middle grade stories, please check this out. It's such a great book. There are parts around the end where there were a few plot holes, and it left me questioning where the story would go a little bit, but the friendships that are developed in here and the magic and the other world, are incredible. And if you're looking for something on a cold or dreary day just to snuggle up with, this is your book. The last book I don't actually have on me right now because I've lent it out to my niece, but it will appear here, hopefully. And that is The Polar Bear Explorers Club by Alex Bell. It's book 1 and book 2 is either just come out or is just coming out this month or next month. I was so excited when I read this book. It was the most whimsical story I've read in a long time. And sometimes, for me at least, a book that's full of whimsy and very fantastical can either be I like it or a hard leave it. Like if it's too silly, I don't appreciate that aspect of it. But this book just made me giggle. It's a wonderful winter read. Let me read you a little bit about it, and then I'll share my thoughts. It sounded like a respectable and worthy enough death for an explorer, tumbling from an ice bridge to be impaled upon a mammoth tusk, but Stella really didn't want that to happen, just the same. Join Stella Starflake Pearl and her 3 fellow explorers as they trek across the snowy icelands and come face to face with frost fairies, snow queens, outlaw hideouts, unicorns, pygmy dinosaurs. Pygmy dinosaurs. It's hilarious. And carnivorous cabbages. When Stella and 3 other junior explorers get separated from their expedition, can they cross the frozen wilderness and live to tell the tale? So, again, carnivorous cabbages. What was it? Pygmy dinosaurs. There are even more crazy creatures in this book, but it was done in such a fun way that you won't find yourself cringing, or at least I didn't find myself cringing. This takes place in, I believe, I don't know if it said the North Pole, it's just in a wintry environment, and I read this probably as our Canadian winter was just wrapping up, which is spring for most people, and it was perfect timing. I was smiling the whole way through, and I was so obsessed with this story that I contacted the author to see if I could get some books shipped up to the very northern part of Canada, Nunavut, because that's where my father works, and he works with a lot of Inuit children, and I thought this would be a great example of a really strong female character. There's no romance in this book. There's just great friendships and a really funny, strong, loving girl who has great morals and a very mysterious background. So if that sounds like it might be up your alley, please check out this book because I can't recommend it enough. Then my favorite 3 YA books for the year. I would start off with my most favorite being The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue by Mackenzie Lee. I've talked about this, I think, in one of my past videos, my November reads. I listened to part of this on audiobook and then read the rest of the book because the audiobook was taking too long and I read way faster, and I couldn't absorb it fast enough. This is basically a story about Monty and his best friend and his sister who go on an adventure across Europe and get into many shenanigans. Don't want to spoil it. If you want to know more about it, you can check out my past videos or take a look up on Goodreads. I'll put the link down below. But this was probably the most lighthearted, laugh out loud, just full of banter and love and mischievousness. This was just a good ride. So if you're looking for a good laugh and a good love story and maybe a little bit of culture thrown in there, check out The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue. Next, I have a book that has probably made it onto quite a few people's top 10 lists or favorites of 2018, and that is Vicious by V.E. Schwab. This was a book I wasn't sure I would actually like. It's had a lot of hype, and it took me a while to get into it. I wasn't sure how I felt about the main character at first, and it took a while for the relationships to really blossom. But by the end, I knew that this was one of my favorite books that I've read this year. It says, Victor and Eli started out as 2 brilliant but arrogant college students who recognized the same sharpness and ambition in each other. In their senior year, a shared research interest in adrenaline, near-death experiences, and seemingly supernatural events reveals an intriguing possibility that under the right conditions, someone could develop extraordinary abilities. But when their thesis moves from academic to the experimental, things go horribly wrong. That concept alone had me very intrigued because it seemed to be written in a way that it could almost be possible. And I found it really interesting how it was tying in adrenaline and the sciences behind that. 10 years later, Victor breaks out of prison, determined to catch up to his old friend, now foe, aided by a young girl whose reserved nature obscures a stunning ability. Meanwhile, Eli is on a mission to eradicate every other superpowered person, they call it EOs, that he can find, aside from his sidekick, an enigmatic woman with an unbreakable will, armed with terrible power on both sides, driven by the memory of betrayal and loss. The arch nemesis have set a course for revenge, but who will be left alive at the end? This was a fantastically written book. The pacing was a little slow for me. If you're looking for something a little bit darker than most of the fantasies out there, I'd pick this up in a heartbeat. One of my favorite Victoria Schwab books I've read to date. Oh, Lucky's here to help me with my last YA book as my little therapy pet, eh? That is because this book absolutely broke my heart and destroyed me. And this is All the Bright Places by Jennifer Niven. So it's not much of a spoiler to say that this is a heart-wrenching book. I mean, it says that right on the cover. It says a heart-wrenching, unflinching story of love shared, life lived, and two teens who find each other while standing on the edge. I would recommend, if you're going to read this, that you're in a good place emotionally. It deals with some very hard-hitting topics, and for me, it was, I think I took about a week or two after reading this book before I could pick anything else back up again, just because I was so emotionally moved by it. It says, Theodore Finch is fascinated by death. Every day he thinks of ways he might die, but every day he also searches for and manages to find something to keep him here and alive and awake. Violet Markey lives for the future, counting the days until graduation, when she can escape her small Indiana town and her aching grief in the wake of her sister's death. When Finch and Violet meet on the ledge of the bell tower at school, 6 stories above the ground, it's unclear who saves whom. Soon it's only with Violet that Finch can be himself, and it's only with Finch that Violet forgets to count away the days and starts living them. But as Violet's world grows, Finch begins to shrink. So I don't want to say much about this book other than what I already have. If you're looking for a book that is a little bit darker and brings out all the feels, this is definitely one of them. Now, last I've got my 3 favorite adult picks for 2018, and I just want to let you know that none of these books necessarily came out in 2018, but I read them in 2018. First, I've got The Little Paris Bookshop by Nina George, and this is just a great adult fiction story that brings you into Paris and to France, and if you love books about books with a little romance in there, this would be the book for you. It says, Monsieur Perdu is a literary apothecary. From his floating bookstore in a barge on the Seine, he prescribes novels for the hardship of life. Using his intuitive feel for the exact book a reader needs, Perdu mends broken hearts and souls. The only person he can't seem to heal is himself. He's still haunted by heartbreak after his great love disappeared. She left him with only a letter that he has never opened. After Perdu is finally tempted to read the letter, he hauls anchor and departs on a mission to the south of France, hoping to make peace with his loss and discover the end of the story. He dispenses his book and his wisdom along the way, showing that the literary world can take the human soul on a journey to heal itself. An international bestseller filled with warmth and adventure, The Little Paris Bookshop is a love letter to books meant for anyone who believes in the power of stories to shape people's lives. It had some great stories in here of characters that came together that were all in different parts of their life and having trouble dealing with it, and they each held each other up and helped each other through it. There was some great food aspects in here. At times, different things were making me drool, and also just some of the quotes in here. I usually don't mark up my books, but I've dog-eared and even highlighted some of my favorite quotes in here that were just really beautiful. So that's The Little Paris Bookshop. Then I've got The Stranger in the Woods, The Extraordinary Story of the Last True Hermit by Michael Finkel. This is a book I happened to pick up just on a whim while at the bookstore. The story didn't absolutely grab me, but I thought it was an interesting concept, and it's not that big a book, so I was looking for a quick, interesting read, and that's exactly what this was. It says, many people dream of escaping modern life, but most will never act on it. Told in a riveting narrative, this is a remarkable true story of a man who lived alone in the woods of Maine for 27 years and made his dream a reality. In 1986, a shy and intelligent 20-year-old named Christopher Knight left his home in Massachusetts, drove to Maine, and disappeared into the forest. He would not have a conversation with another human being until nearly 3 decades later, when he was arrested for stealing food. Living in a tent, even through brutal winters, he had survived by his wits and courage, developed ingenious ways to store edibles and water, and to avoid freezing to death. He broke into nearby cottages for food, clothing, reading material. Another reason why I love this man. He was an absolute bibliophile. And other provisions, taking only what he needed, but terrifying a community never able to solve the mysterious burglaries. Based on extensive interviews with Knight himself, this is a vividly detailed account of his secluded life. Why did he leave? What did he learn? As well as the challenges he faced since returning to the world. It's a gripping story of survival that asks fundamental questions about solitude, community, and what makes a good life, as well as a deeply moving portrait of a man who's determined to live his own way and succeed. So I can't say too much about it other than what I just read out loud to you. But there's some great writing, and it really makes you think about your own life and about all the things you think you need in it. And my very last book is Fire into Ice, Charles Fipke and the Great Diamond Hunt. This is the true life story of the man behind the Great Canadian Diamond Discovery by Vernon Frolick. So this looks like it has a bit of an older cover. I'm not sure when it was published, but I picked it up this year, and it's become one of my favorite books of all time. Not because of the man it was written about. I actually, after reading this, quite disliked him, but the story is so interesting and engaging and right up my alley about learning about explorers and also the Canadian diamond industry, which I didn't know a whole lot about. Let's see if I can read. From the jungles of New Guinea to the rugged terrain of the Arctic, Chuck Fipke's relentless quest for minerals led to his staking of the multi-billion-dollar Acadie diamond claim in Canada's Northwest Territories. More than just a mining business success story, this compelling biography of a modern-day Indiana Jones. There's that name again, Indiana Jones, that's why it drew me in. A spellbinding tale of passion and adventure, and it really is. So if you're into that, if you want to learn about this absolutely incredible life that this man has led, I would look into Fire into Ice. It's one of the books I have also sent to some of my favorite friends around the world who love to travel, and they also had really good things to say about it. On behalf of Lucky and I, thanks for tuning in again to Bookhaven. And if you've liked anything that you've heard or seen, click that like button and subscribe, and you will see us again. Take care for now.